the nature of your emergency?
Welcome back to the Tactical Living Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Welton, joined by Sergeant Welton. Glenn, how are you?
I'm excellent.
You know how a lot of people will say things like good cop, bad cop?
Yeah.
Something that comes to mind for me is that I feel like there are a lot of people that fall into that bad cop because there's been this sort of slow burn of bitterness that has happened because the job has made them angry.
Yeah, I think over time you become... You let things impact you, whether you recognize it or not, to where you become more cynical, you get more bitter, and I've seen this in the past, especially in my career, is like you always have the guy I'll be the bad cop, and like people really think we joke like that, but it's not a reality. But in some ways you do it without even having knowledge that you're being an ass, you're being more aggressive compared to how you would normally be.
Yeah, and it's funny how your mind went straight to like a hands-on call, like going out onto a call, and then my head went to an interrogation room of like two detectives sitting there, one deciding to play the good cop and one the bad cop. And when it comes to the element of the bad cop, and we're just going to continue to use that reference for this episode, I think that there are a lot of signs that are shown that bitterness is starting to creep in. And one of them could be that you're dreading every single shift, even when nothing bad has happened. And what happens is that you're going to start to be incredibly irritable even before the day starts. Something's coming to mind where, I know somebody who, like, during, I don't know, family breakfast or however their morning works, he would say, like, okay, I woke up with my monster today. And then the whole family knew, he's also a police officer. The whole family knew, like, okay, now it's time for us to kind of back away from dad for the day.
Yeah, if you're holding on to those negative emotions because of your experiences, because of what's going on, and that unsettled happiness that is creating that negative environment, it's trying to break yourself out of it, because ultimately all you're doing is pissing off yourself.
Something else that I see is people blaming leadership for everything. And don't get me wrong, I'm on your side. For a majority of the time, leadership is probably at fault. However, if you're of the mindset that no matter what's happening, you just assume that it's the command at fault, this just reinforces a victim mindset, actually, and it blocks you from being able to grow.
Yeah, and I've heard this, and I think I've used it before, is there's two things cops absolutely hate, and I think this goes across the board for any first responder. It's they hate change and the situation that they're in. And they're always going to deflect, it's almost human nature is deflect, to find reasonings outside of ourselves why we're to this point.
I'm having my own element of like self-humor in my head right now with what is about to come out of my mouth. But once upon a time, I knew a tiny-sized cop who had a tiny-sized time frame of being a police officer. And he was the type of person who was just increasingly sarcastic and cynical. And he thought that he was funny all of the time. And he couldn't even see that his jokes were actually super sharp and super bitter, not funny at all. And the type of thing that instead of him creating a circle, he was actually deflecting people out of his life, so much to the extent that I am included.
Yeah. And as time goes along, you're going to always see those people, and they start creating a dynamic too. They think that they're this comedian. They think that they're funny because one time someone laughed at one of their jokes, and then it snowballs into, I'm going to stick to it, and this is who I am, and start identifying as, and ultimately you end up hurting yourself and pushing everybody away.
Well, something else too is that they've decided that it's been reinforcement of them to continue down that sort of negative behavior. And there's so much that could go into somebody who's in that element of this unhealthy spiral. And something else that I see happen is that somebody might shut down when the public thanks them. And even so, they might even feel like it's offensive, or like I'm too good for that kind of comment. I see that happening. And this is a sign of internal conflict and actually loss of identity and even connection.
Yeah, and you want to be able to accept that. And what's something that just came to me as you were saying that, is some of these younger guys nowadays, it's a weird dynamic because like they could be good cops, they could be horrible cops, no matter what, and they're going to get the positive, oh, I appreciate your service and all that stuff. Some of these guys nowadays, it reinforces their mindset of, oh, I'm doing things right, I'm going to keep doing things this way, even though the person who told them that has no clue what they're doing. They're just ass backwards in how they handle situations.
Yeah. And another thing is that you might even struggle to find joy or happiness outside of your job. That tiny cop there's more to that. Like, I'm not just being a brat, but literally a tiny cop. He had nothing else to talk about besides that one time in his life. Right. And when that happens, then I feel like many times it could create these moments of feeling empty or like you don't have a personal fulfillment. And that was very evident for that individual. And it's actually sad to see somebody that holds on to something so much that no longer exists because that doesn't serve you anymore. And it's like, okay, this is how I'm feeling about it. What can I do now in order to be able to grow from that?
Yeah, being able to let go of that and hold on to new memories and to new experiences that's how you can start shifting and changing that dynamic. I was just thinking of, like, we went over to our friend's house for dinner recently, and I was like, did I even talk about work when I was there? And I'm trying to diagnose it. And I touched on something because I got a phone call. But apart from that, it's funny. And that's why it's so important to have people outside of your profession to be able to not have to share those stories and find connection outside of your profession.
I'm really glad that you use that as an example because it's a very unique dichotomy with that group. We were in a house with tons of people all over the place. And those people, every single one of them, it's such a healthy relationship that we have with them because they also know to respect you in particular with your profession. So they don't cross the line. They don't ask those selfish, have you ever killed somebody questions? Like, they don't go there. And so you're absolutely right. Like, that is so, so important in order to make sure that we can kind of cool the burn before it becomes permanent. And really naming the source of that bitterness and then getting real. Is it leadership? Is it the culture? Is it because I am not sleeping well? Is it because I'm not feeling my body right? And then talk to someone who's been there before and then found a way through it. Peer support and mentors can really help to be able to shift your mindset.
Yeah, I think we need to move past our own egos when it comes to seeking those outside sources. If you're experiencing any of these problems, it's one, recognizing it for yourself. But if you can't recognize it, it's relying on your spouse, your friends, your family to be able to identify that for you to say, hey, I think it's time for you to talk to somebody.
And even take a break before you break. That could literally mean taking a vacation and being honest with your spouse, or if you have one, or your family, and saying, I am using 1 week of my vacation time this week to do nothing. I'm using 1 week of vacation time this week to just not be at work, and having those open conversations with the people in your circle so that you can actually reset and recalibrate things emotionally. And it's okay for you to show up different that week that you go back. Be that different person. Change your mind, change your mindset. There's something so beautiful when we come into contact with somebody and then we're like, what happened to them, right? Sometimes it's a new relationship. Sometimes, they finally bought that new house that they've been wanting their entire life, like whatever the thing is. It's golden whenever I see somebody have that kind of glow.
Yeah, having a pattern interrupt like that can change everything no matter what situation you're in. And it's important to do that and set that time aside for yourself to be able to, recognize and realize what it is you truly want. And I think we lean on others too much to find out what we want instead of just looking internally.
So let's go back to that example of taking a week of vacation time just for you. You earned it. You deserved it. You don't have to feel guilty about not taking the family to Disneyland when you do that. There's a big difference between doing that purposefully and not. So doing that to be able to process can help you heal. But if you're taking that solitude to yourself and you're using it to be able to just stew on things, it's going to not only keep that fire alive, but it's going to add to the fury when you go back to work.
Yeah, if you're holding on to that, you're resenting more and more. You go out and all you do is just pound beers and drink that entire time. You're not changing anything. You have to have that introspective to be able to say, okay, this isn't working. This is how I'm going to change it.
I hope you've gotten some value out of today's episode. If you have, do us a favor, drop a review, subscribe down below. And as always, know that I'm sending you a long, tight hug from my home to yours.